All right, let's say our La'asok B'divrei Torah blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher iftanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praise to you, Lord our God, rule of the universe, who's made us holy with your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. Okay. So, looking at this picture, whether or not you know what a Pidyon Haben is, what is going on? From just what can you see that is happening in this picture? How do you? Let's start with that. What can you see?
The mama and a daddy holding a baby, and a possible rabbi. I had a pigeon bin, so I know what it is, but it's like, looks like a family event. I don't want to explain what it is, so take anything away from you, David.
Right. There's also not that much to explain based off of the question of what can you see going on. Okay, so we got a family event.
In somebody's home, it looks like.
Yeah, a family event in someone's home. Okay, what else?
New baby.
Okay, there's a baby involved.
Everybody looks happy.
Here.
And it looks like somebody's reading something off his phone.
Yeah. All right. Any other observations of what you can see going on here?
Yeah. It's before the ceremony because the food isn't out.
Right.
And there has to be food because that's part of it. And I also think it's surprising that the mother's smiling as much as she's smiling. It must have been a particular moment. Because even if you're there, my only child is male, so whatever, but I think it's an anxious time for parents, often particularly a mother if she's just given birth. It's getting through the ritual.
Well, the food isn't there, and I agree with you. Any family gathering, there should be food, but something else missing is a handful of coins that I don't see.
Right.
Okay. So we're getting a sense of what isn't there from those who have a sense of what the ceremony is, as well as what we can see going on.
It's not as anxiety provoking as the bris.
So true.
And it's also a little bit later.
Later, right.
Okay, so this is a Pidyon Haben ceremony. It is one of two that I've been to. This is one of my friends, close friends' ceremony. The person with the phone happens to be a rabbi, but more importantly, he is a Kohen. All right, so let's start with an introduction. Norma, would you read this, please?
Charlie tugged at Mama's skirt. "Now can I see the pigeon?" he asked loudly. They all stopped to listen to Charlie's strange request. "Pigeon?" Mama repeated, puzzled. "What's a pigeon?" Charlie explained patiently. "You said we were going to a party and there's a pigeon and his name is Ben. I don't see no pigeon." That's funny. All of a Kind Family Uptown by Sidney Taylor. That's cute.
All right. Thank you. So, Pidyon Haben, not quite the same thing as Pidyon Haben, but from
my oldest son was a boy, so we had a Pidyon Haben. And there were very few people that you had in that picture. Usually there's a lot of people.
That's true.
There's a grandma.
Yep, there are two. We've got two sets of grandparents in this picture, I believe.
Okay, here.
Yeah, but it can be hard to tell if you don't know the specifics. It's also possible, and I believe this was the case as the person who took the picture, that the other people were out of shot. But yes, a Pidyon Haben can have a lot of people. It can also have very few people. So with that, Alan, would you read our next introduction, please?
Okay. Oh, I see where you got that from. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is from Collected Responsa in Wartime. Question, is it possible to have a Pidyon Haben in absentia, the child being elsewhere and the father in camp? The camp in this case being, I guess, an army camp or a military camp.
Yes. All right. And then our context, please.
During World War II, the Jewish Welfare Board for the military created the Committee of Army and Navy Religious Activities. This was a rabbinical group with equal representation from Orthodox, conservative, and Reform rabbis. They received religious questions from Jewish military chaplains, and they had to come up with consensus responses, which they did. And the collection of the responsa can be found at the link that David has there.
Thank you. So, Alan, since you were the one who brought this to my attention, do you want to say anything else about this collection?
Yeah, it's on Sefaria. It's a collection of responsa from this board of rabbis that were put together during the Second World War to answer questions of Jewish practice for Jewish servicemen. And there was an Orthodox, a conservative, and a Reform rabbi. And from what I remember, every responsa was unanimous, which is pretty amazing. And they dealt with all kinds of questions. There were kashrut questions. There were questions about conversion, because very often you had a Jewish serviceman who was overseas and met a woman who wasn't Jewish, and they decided to get married. And there were questions about, conversion or non-conversion or getting married or whatever. And just a lot of very, very fascinating issues that were dealt with.
I wonder what they would have said about fighting on Shabbat in those days.
I don't think there was any question about fighting on Shabbat. You just did it.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
So, by a vote of acclamation, because now that I'm screen sharing, it's a little hard to see all of you. My question is, at this moment, do you think it is possible to have a Pidyon Haben where you don't have the child present, but you do have the father and you do have the Kohen?
I'm going to guess yes.
Certainly in Israel, David, or in Ukraine, or a part of the world like that.
But I find this a little bit puzzling. It's not a modern phenomenon for fathers to be separated from a newborn child. So there must be halacha about this. And why would it be, why would I mean, you have a bris with the child without the father being there. So why couldn't you have this with the child? In other words, why does it have to be implemented by the father? Couldn't it be implemented? What if the father, God forbid, has died? Couldn't someone else perform this if the child is present?
These are good questions.
Your question was if the child is not present. The father and the Kohen were present, and the child was not there.
Yes.
Right. My point is, why is that even a question? Right. You don't ask that about a bris, obviously. Right. It's centered on the child. Why is this one centered on the father?
He's the one that does the procedure, which David will explain.
Yeah. No, understood. It's interesting. Yeah.
And the mother isn't allowed to do it, I don't think, David, right? It's a father thing.
It is a father thing.
Yeah.
But it only applies if it's the first male
First
child
one.
that opens the womb, right?
Right.
So she's got a little job here, a little relevance.
But Cindy does raise a question. If the father died before the Pidyon Haben was performed, that firstborn child be the man of the house, and would it be necessary for the Pidyon Haben to be, I guess it would still be necessary. I was thinking of something else. I mean, you wouldn't want him to go off and serve the temple, if you will, back in the old days. He would have to be at home to serve the family as the head of the household. I was thinking of something backwards. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm sure David will get to it later, that there are also circumstances of genealogy where one does not have a Pidyon Haben. In my case, it was because I had a grandmother who was, even though she was female, she was still carrying Levi blood, and that canceled the need for a Pidyon Haben for me, which some people have teased me as the reason I became a clergyman.
All right. Well, let's see what of these questions and points we can address by the end, and what has not been addressed you can bring up again, and either I will answer or I will find an answer. All right. Doris, would you read what is a Pidyon Haben, please?
A Pidyon Haben is a Jewish ceremony for firstborn male children, redeeming them from their biblical obligations. Why do we do Pidyon Haben?
Thank you. All right, let's go on to why do we do a Pidyon Haben, and then we will discuss. Herb, would you read this, please?
During the 10th plague, the Egyptian firstborn were killed, and the Israelites were not. In gratitude for this, when the Israelites left Egypt, God wanted the firstborn sons to assist the priests. For example, Hannah brought her firstborn son Samuel to assist Eli, the priest. Then, during the golden calf incident, most of the people besides the tribe of Levi worshipped an idol within a few weeks of God giving them the 10 Commandments. After that, God switched to having the Levites help the priests. According to the Torah, God put in place a redemption ceremony as a way of having firstborn sons continue to not be on call for assisting the priests.
Thank you. All right. questions or comments about why we do a Pidyon Haben?
I have a,
never did. Go ahead, Phil.
thank you. I mean, I went and looked it up. I had forgotten some of the details, but I mean, what's really going on here is there's this, at least it says in the book of Numbers, the firstborn son was supposed to be a sacrifice, and in his place, God takes the Levites, and the firstborn son is redeemed, and in maybe in the other firstborn sons are redeemed by payment to the Kohen. We have a problem with that story, but that seems to be an important old story.
When you say the firstborn son was a sacrifice, do you mean the firstborn is where it says in Numbers chapter 3, for every firstborn is mine, I consecrate every firstborn in Israel to be mine, the Lord's? Is that what you're referring to, Phil?
Well, that's the reference in Numbers. Yes. No, it doesn't say there that it's a sacrifice, but there, I'm because I'm not prepared to point to that, but there is this idea. God has Abraham. He tells him to sacrifice his firstborn, and then we make a story about how he accepts a substitute, but I think that's the idea that the firstborn son is so valuable, is such a precious gift, and that's all.
So let's see if I have your point right. You're making the point that the firstborn son is a super precious gift, and the first of everything, animals, crops, people, is supposed to be dedicated to God because it's extra special. And then we are redeeming it back from God. Is that the general thrust of what you're going for?
Thank you. It's something like that. It seems like more than just filling in for a job where someone else was not available. I mean, there's an idea there, and it's a kind of a horrific idea of sacrificing the firstborn. But I agree with you. The numbers, the numbers quote doesn't say that. I agree with you. So maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it.
But the Israelites are absolutely castigated time and again for even remotely associating themselves with the local cultures that sacrificed their children. I mean, we're told explicitly that's not ever to be contemplated. And I think dedicating your firstborn to a life of service is more than just filling in. Had that been the practice, that's huge.
Fair enough. I'm just saying there's a background idea, which is that they, in fact, I think those proscriptions are insisting on that against the tradition. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. I don't want to push the point any further.
I think, Phil, there are two different threads going on in the idea of the Pidyon Haben. One is the thread of the first of everything belongs to God, and the other thread, and then we redeem the firstborn child back from God. And the other thread is that of the Levites replacing the firstborn And so we redeem the firstborn back in recognition that it used to be their job, and then the Levites replace them. And there are verses in the Torah that support both of these directions. So I will amend my sheet to be clear about both of these directions.
Not that God ever explains anything he puts into play, but he certainly doesn't tell us why he allowed the redemption of the firstborn. The firstborn and the Levites both could have been helping the priests, if you will. It would be interesting to know why he changed his mind about the firstborns, if you will.
Let's look at the verses, because this might shed some light on the situation. I have them further down in an appendix, but we will go down to them and then we'll come back to the other stuff that we're skipping over. Come on. All right, here we go. So, Exodus chapter 13. So this is, we've just been released from Egypt. And God says to Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn, man and beast. The first issue of every womb amongst the Israelites is mine. I assure you that the next 9 verses do not have anything to do with this, but you can look it up later if you don't believe me. And then getting back on topic, and when the Lord has brought you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and to your fathers and given it to you, you shall set apart for the Lord every first issue of the womb, every male firstling that your cattle drop shall be the Lord's, but every firstling ass you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck, and you must redeem every firstborn male amongst your child. You may not break their necks. And when in time to come your son asks, saying, what does this mean? You shall say to him, it was with a mighty hand that the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of bondage. That would be one of the verses for the 4 children. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord slew every firstborn in the land of Egypt, the firstborn of both man and beast. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord every first male issue of the womb, but redeem every firstborn among my sons. And it shall be as a sign upon your hand, as a symbol upon your forehead, that with a mighty hand the Lord freed us from Egypt. That would be tefillin. So what does this text say explained for why we have to do Pidyon Haben?
Phil, is that the reference you were thinking of? Where it says, I sacrifice to the Lord every first male issue of the womb, but redeem every one among my sons?
Yeah, I had that in the back of my mind along with the Akedah story, which is, I think it's over. It's there. But yes, I'm sorry.
David,
I took you in the wrong direction, David. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
David, isn't there a problem with this? Because according to this, every firstborn sheep, for example, belongs to the Lord. But if that sheep is somehow not perfect, it can't be sacrificed to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a contradiction of sorts? And I guess that would also raise a question if a child is born deformed, would he have to be redeemed?
No, the problem is, are you talking about verse 3?
You have to go
Sorry,
back
13,
to
verse 13. Verse 13.
Yes, it says every firstborn, every male firstling shall be, that your cattle drop shall be the Lord's.
Right.
But if a firstborn lamb or beef is deformed in some way or has some kind of a blemish, you cannot sacrifice that animal. So where does
Right.
it, how does
So-
it belong to the Lord at that point?
So are you asking about where it talks about the ass, or are you just asking a general question about sacrifice?
General question about a non-human firstborn animal, male.
All right. Then you have to replace it. So for
If-
instance, verse 13, the only non-kosher, so to speak, animal that the Israelites had at the time was the donkey. And so every firstborn donkey had to be replaced with a sheep, because you can
Right.
sacrifice a sheep, but you can't sacrifice a donkey.
Right.
So
But if-
similarly, when we learn about the Passover sacrifice, if you've set aside a sheep to be your Passover sacrifice, and then it just becomes lame and you can't use it, you have to replace it with another one that you can use.
Okay, but let's assume you have 100 firstborn male sheep born,
Yep.
and one of them is blemished in some way or lame or whatever, and you
Yep.
cannot sacrifice that one to the Lord.
Yep.
You have to replace with another firstborn male.
No,
What do you place it with?
another sheep.
Male or female, doesn't matter.
Probably of the same gender. You want to get as close a replacement as possible.
Okay.
But you're already sacrificing other firstborn males. So
You could replace a second-born male, if you will.
exactly.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. These are good questions. You're thinking like Talmudic scholars.
Or I'm confusing myself, either one. Or both.
They may have done the same to them as well. I wasn't there at the time. All right, let's go on to Numbers. Numbers chapter 3. I hereby take the Levites from among the Israelites in place of all the male firstborn. The first issue of the womb among the Israelites, the Levites shall be mine. For every male firstborn is mine. At the time that I smote every male firstborn in the land of Egypt, I consecrated every male firstborn in Israel, human and beast, to myself, to be mine, Adonai's. All right.
But the Levites don't have to be firstborn males.
No, all the Levites are replacing all the firstborn males,
Including the females.
No, probably the male Levites. I don't know exactly what the female Levites did, but I don't believe they had sacrificial duties.
And the Levites, it's not just the firstborn of the Levites, but all the Levite males.
Correct. All right. Let's keep going. Numbers 3, same chapter further on. Here we're taking a census of all the male firstborns of the Israelites from the age of 1 month and up, and then taking the Levites and replacing every male firstborn amongst the Israelites, and the cattle of the Levites are replacing every male firstborn amongst the cattle of the Israelites. And this comes to 2,273 human male firstborns. And then we take and then there are 273 extra male firstborn Israelites above and beyond all the male Levites. And so then those 273 extra get redeemed at the rate of 5 shekels per head. And this goes towards the maintenance of the tabernacle.
Okay, this is not perfect. So the families don't redeem their child. It's the entire Israelite community that has to redeem these 273 firstborn males. Because you don't know which are the excess Israelites, from which families they come.
That is true. It's a little unclear where this money is coming from. I will see if I can find out where this money is coming from. But
Moses took the redemption money from those over and above the ones redeemed by the Levites.
that's true.
So he took the money from the male for it. Yeah, it doesn't say where it comes from. Moses handed it to Aaron, but where did Moses get it?
I don't know. I'll look into it. All right, finally. For every, all right, therefore the Levites shall be qualified. This is a few chapters later in Numbers. They are formally assigned to me from among the Israelites. I have taken them for myself in place of all the first issue of the womb, of all the male firstborn of the Israelites. For every male firstborn amongst the Israelites, human as well as beast, is mine. I consecrate them to myself at the time that I smote every male firstborn in the land of Egypt. Now I take the Levites instead of every male firstborn of the Israelites. And Numbers 18, we are taking this redemption price for the age of 1 month and up, the money equivalent of 5 shekels by the sanctuary weight. All right, so those are our verses. At this point, recognizing the time, I'm going to move a little bit faster.
Let me just raise one issue. If the community had a sacrifice, if the community as a whole redeemed those 273 Israelites, firstborn Israelites, then it would seem to me today that it would be the community who would redeem today's firstborn, not the families.
Good question. I will table it and either come back to it and during our class or by email. All right, when does one do a Pidyon Haben? So Pidyon Haben is held when a baby boy is 31 days old. This is because many babies didn't live through their first month. If the 31st day falls on Shabbat or festival, then it gets pushed to the next available day, or potentially to an evening that's not on Shabbat or festival, depends on the exact specifics of the day. If there's a medical reason to delay beyond the 31st day, the ceremony is done when the baby is medically ready. That's what happened to me. I had jaundice when I was 31 days old, so my Pidyon Haben was done later. If the parents don't know about the Pidyon Haben when the baby is 31 days old, then it can be done up to the bar mitzvah ceremony by the parents and beyond by the child himself. And then we've got a resource for more information about the timing of the ceremony. Things that you need. You need a baby. You need a Kohen or Bat Kohen. For Orthodox Jews, just a male Kohen. So an adult Jew whose father was descended from Moses' brother Aaron. And you need 5 silver shekels or $5 silver. Some communities have a set that they use for all occurrences of the ceremony. And unless it's a fast day of the family is sitting Shiva, you need a meal, and the ceremony will occur between Hamotzi and eating the food. When would you not do a Pidyon Haben? So in order to do a Pidyon Haben, the following stars need to align. It needs to be a first pregnancy, not counting any miscarriages before 40 days of pregnancy. Born through the birth canal, needs to be a son. No parent is a Kohen, Bat Kohen, Levi, or Bat Levi, meaning that their father was a direct descendant of Aaron or one of Aaron's cousins. So if any of these are not the case, there's no ceremony. What about for girls? So the Torah is pretty clear, as we just saw, that the ceremony is about firstborn boys once having assisted the priests and now not doing so. So there is nothing to redeem a firstborn girl from. However, the special nature of the firstborn daughter ought to be emphasized just like it is for a firstborn son. There are those who say that since a simchat bat, a baby naming ceremony for girls, doesn't have to be on the 8th day, it could be on the 31st day for a firstborn girl, and the following addition could be added: by virtue of the reward due to the righteous women of the generation of the Exodus, were ancestors redeemed from Egypt, thus tying in the redemption theme of the Pidyon Haben ceremony. And then if you want to learn more about this topic, there's a link. On the other hand, somebody did come up with a 1976 version of the ceremony, which eliminates gender and also the Kohen. And if you're interested, there's a link for that. Now, rare question. What happens if you have Siamese twins?
Yikes.
So this actually comes up in the Talmud. And in the Talmud, it notices that the Torah says the redeeming of the firstborn son should be, quote, 5 shekels per head. Therefore, a set of Siamese twins would be 10 shekels, but redeemed at the same time. On the other hand, for regular twins, whether they're fraternal or identical, only the male who comes out first is to be redeemed.
But even with Siamese twins, one comes out first.
That's true, but they're considered one body.
Actually, if they're born by cesarean, sometimes they're lifted out. So,
Right. Then
so I think the term is conjoined
yes.
That's
these
true.
days rather than Siamese.
Thank you.
If they're
That's
done
true.
by,
Although if they're born by cesarean, then they don't get a Pidyon Haben.
Oh, good point. Good point. And I think these days, all conjoined, vaginal birth would be extremely likely for conjoined because it's picked up by scan first.
Fair enough. Thank you. All right. So the ceremony. There's actually a lot of variation in how the ceremony goes. However, everybody agrees on the following key parts: establishing that the child is a firstborn, establishing that the father wishes to redeem the child from the Kohen, the Al Pidyon Haben blessing, the Shechianu blessing, blessing the child in some way, and the Borei Priya Gafen blessing over grape juice or wine, which will either be at the end or almost at the end, depending on what you're looking at. So here is one version of the ceremony. This is the one that is found in the Koran Siddur. The father presents his son to a Kohen and declares, "This is my firstborn son, the first issue of his mother's womb. The Holy Blessed One has commanded us to redeem him, as it is said." Quote from Numbers 18:16, "Those who are to be redeemed, you must redeem from the age of 1 month at a fixed price of 5 shekels of silver by the sacred standard, which is 20 gerahs to the shekel." And as it is further said, quote from Exodus, "Consecrate to me every firstborn, the first of every womb amongst the people of Israel, whether of human or beast, or consecrate to me every firstborn, semicolon, the first of every womb among the people of Israel, whether of human or beast, belongs to me." Then the Kohen checks with the mother that this is her firstborn, and then asks if she has miscarried 41 days or more into a pregnancy before this child. If her answer is first yes and then no, the Kohen asks the father, "Which do you prefer? To give me your firstborn son, the first birth of his mother, or to redeem him for 5 selas, as you are bound to do according to the Torah?" Now, no matter how challenging the child has been up to that point, how many stinky poopy diapers, how much they've cried nonstop, how much they have woken the parents up in the middle of the night, no father has yet said, "Actually, you keep the child. I've had enough of you." Not done, and not actually an option, despite what is said. Every father replies, "I wish to redeem my child. I present you with the cost of his redemption, which I'm bound to give according to the Torah." Then, the Kohen still has the child, and the father still has the money, and the father says, "Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Pidyon Haben." Praise to you, Lord our God, rule the universe, who has sanctified us with the divine commandments and command us concerning the redemption of a son. The father then goes on and says, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'achiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu azman hazeh. Praise to you, Lord our God, rule the universe, who has granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion. The redemption money is then given to the Kohen, who then returns the child to the father. The Kohen takes a cup of wine or grape juice and says, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Praise to you, Lord our God, rule the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. With the Kohen's right hand on the head of the child, the Kohen then blesses the child as follows. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. May God bless you and guard you. May God shine the divine countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May God turn the divine countenance towards you and grant you peace. So that would be the priestly blessing. And then more verses. The Lord is your garden. The Lord is your protection at your right hand. The Lord will guard you against all harm, guarding your life. The length of days, years of life, and peace may God increase for you. So, that's the ceremony. Before we get to some conclusions, questions thus far?
Earlier, you read that the child is redeemed for 5 Sarah or 5 silver dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe we have any Sarah in this country, and silver dollars are no longer minted and are very hard to come by. So what do we do today?
So 5 sellers, as you are bound to do according to the Torah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So the seller is, when you look at the terms that the Torah uses, in one place the Torah says 5 sellers, in another place the Torah says 5 shekels, and therefore it is assumed that a seller equals a shekel in this particular situation. So then you use 5 shekels.
In this country, we don't use shekels.
That's true, but they are relatively easy to come by in this day of transcontinental flights.
Okay.
But this is part of why communities will often have a set of silver dollars so that everybody can have this for their ceremony, instead of everybody need to go out and get their own.
So we give the community a $5 bill and take the 5 silver dollars for the ceremony, I assume.
Some communities work it like that. Some just say, we're lending this to you, and then you give it back to us. And, it's like a library book. If you fail to return it, then we will charge you replacement value.
Yep. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment.
Please.
Kohanim will have either a set of the older silver dollars, 1964 or prior, or the 5 Pidyon Haben shekels from Israel. And the Kohen will sell it to the father, should be for the market price. And then the father gives it back to the Kohen. And many times, because my father was a Kohen, the Kohen will give the money back to the child as a gift. I think at the time my father officiated at Pidyon, silver dollars were like 90% silver, and you could get them at the bank for $5. But the price of silver has increased enormously, and silver dollars have not been minted for a long time, even the copper ones. Also, you can buy them from a coin dealer.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Marilyn. All right, recognizing the time, I'm going to show you what is left in our sheet. So going back to our previous question about can you do a Pidyon Haben without the ben, without the child? There are authorities who are quoted as saying, even in another city where the firstborn child is not present, the father can redeem him. And this is referred to in a note in the Shulchan Aruch, which is from the 1500s. So to, I believe it was Cindy's point, that this question has been around for a long time. Yes. And so the answer is, a soldier may have a Pidyon Haben without the child being present. That is the answer that the rabbis came up with during World War II.
David, I think something to remember is the questions weren't always directed to a rabbi.
That's true.
They were directed to someone who had to direct it to a rabbi.
Right.
So, that may explain why it had to go to this board as opposed to someone just being able to answer it on the spot.
Yes, that is a good point.
Do you need to have a Kohen present for the Pidyon Haben, or can he have a stand-in? No, you need a Kohen. That you do need to have. Modern equivalent of this World War II question came up a few months ago in Gaza. You can see the video where you've got the new father, you've got the Kohen, you do not have the child, and they do a Pidyon Haben. They also don't have 5 silver. They also don't have 5 shekels on hand because that would be clinky. So the father uses his tefillin, which he says in Hebrew on the video are worth more than 5 shekels. So that's what he uses instead. Okay, then we get to the end of the story about Benny the pigeon. So I'll let you read that later. It goes through the whole ceremony. Great. Then we've got the quote from a book, The Year Mom Got Religion, which talks about it. And then some appendices. Appendix A, from The Observant Life, a conservative perspective, all about Pidyon Haben. Appendix B would be the verses and various other texts on the matter. Appendix C is a Devar Torah about Pidyon Haben and egalitarianism from Maron Hirsch. Let's see. About whether or not girls should have it. Appendix D is an alternative script. I know I'm moving very quickly. You'll get this afterwards. Appendix E, more thoughts on Devar Torah. Appendix F is a reform take. And then Appendix G is an Orthodox take from Marilyn. Thank you very much. Used with her permission. So that is it. I'm going to stop the share and the recording.